Howdy folks, I am your Princess ChaoticAyana, you are all beautiful, and I am in no way recording this video immediately after recording last week's. That is my story and I am sticking to it. Speaking of stories, welcome to my story discussion on Resident Evil 8 Village. Now, fair warning, we are going to pull no punches when it comes to spoilers. If you have not finished the game yet, if you have not played the game yet, this is the time to leave, okay? You've been warned. So, a couple of weeks ago now, I did a video talking about my concerns from Resident Evil 7 as they applied to Resident Evil Village. We took a look last week at all of the non-story concerns I had, and I'm happy to say I was wrong about most of those. Was I wrong about the story concern though? Well. So Resident Evil Village is in fact an idiot plot. For those unfamiliar with the term, this is essentially the idea that one or all of the characters in a story must be idiots for the story to work in any meaningful way. And yeah, sadly, this is absolutely true of Resident Evil Village, right from the start as well. So Mia and Ethan are sitting down for a lovely meal 3 years after the events in Louisiana, which was Resident Evil 7. Chris Redfield bursts in, kills Mia, and takes the couple's baby Rose and Ethan hostage. One car crash later, and Ethan is on the hunt for both the baby and Chris Redfield. Great setup, right? Here's the thing though, we later learn that in fact was not Mia, that was Mother Miranda, the game's main antagonist, impersonating Mia. Mia is once again living up to her name and being missing in action, and tell me you can unsee that now that I pointed it out to you. Here's my question, why doesn't Chris just tell Ethan that? Seriously, we get a "sorry Ethan" as the only explanation he gives for killing the guy's wife and kidnapping his daughter. He then even proceeds to knock Ethan unconscious and attempt to kidnap him too. Here's the thing, okay? I understand the logic of securing him while there's a shootout going on. Hell, if you're ever in a hostage situation, you're going to be one of the first people in handcuffs, presuming you're a hostage, because they just don't want you running around. That's kind of standard, that's fine. Based on other parts of the plot, I also understand, and we'll get to why in a moment, why they do not necessarily want to tell Ethan what's happening. But would it have killed Chris to at least say something along the lines of, "Look, I'm sorry Ethan, I'll explain everything, but this isn't what it seems, we need to get you to headquarters first." Just something along those lines. As is, we're given the impression that Chris Redfield is supposed to be some kind of secondary antagonist, but that just peters out and goes nowhere because he's not. I don't mind mystery in my game, but don't make the characters morons to do it. Something I only touched on very lightly in my main Resident Evil 8 review were the game's 5 bosses. I know the internet has had its, let's say its imagination captured by Lady Dimitrescu, but the other bosses are interesting as well. So we have tall vampire lady herself, we then have the creepy as hell doll lady, whose name I can never remember for some reason, we have the absolutely pitiful Moreau, and the enigmatic Heisenberg. I love all these characters' designs, and their use as bosses. I do wish we got to know a little bit more about them though. For example, Moreau, who seems to have taken some really adverse effects from Mother Miranda's experiments, and I do want to point out just for a second here that Mold did it is the only explanation we get for these guys' powers, just like I thought it would be. Anyway, Moreau tells you that he wants to capture you, or at least keep you busy longer than the others did, largely so they'll stop picking on him. I love that! That's a really fantastic, tragic boss motivation. It's really unique too, I've never seen that done before. Here's my thing though, we never see the others picking on him. It's a classic example of telling me something rather than showing me, and it really lessens the impact. Now, that said, Lady Dimitrescu and the Dollmaker do both fare far better when it comes to story, but by far the biggest shame to me is how little Heisenberg ended up getting used. Actually, I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute here. That was a problem with the story to me. Mother Miranda creates these 4 big bads and then kind of pits Ethan against them to prove Ethan's strength for the ritual that's ahead. The thing is, by the time we got to the ritual, I wasn't clear what Ethan's part in it was supposed to be. I just shot her a lot. Anyway, Heisenberg is shown to have these really cool telekinetic powers, and then he turns into a giant robot and we take him out like a punk with a tank that Chris Redfield just built. It's a real anticlimax for a character who, if they'd used him right, could have been the next Albert Wesker. I am now going to talk about the game's probably biggest reveal, and I know we've had some spoilers in other sections, but if you haven't played the game and you're watching this video for some reason, here is where to click off, okay? This is the game's biggest spoiler. Still here? Alright, don't say I didn't warn you. So, shortly after killing Heisenberg, Ethan is gravely wounded by Mother Miranda, and he gets a visit from an old friend from Resident Evil 7, who informs him that the reason he can do things like attaching limbs with just a little bit of help from the magic Gwyneth Paltrow juice is because Ethan is in fact not Ethan, but a living mold approximation of Ethan. Ethan never made it out of the house in Louisiana. There were a lot of Ethans in that sentence. You know, here's the thing. I'm actually all for this revelation, although I don't think it's proved popular in some circles. It explains a lot about the way Chris acted at the start of the game, although telling Ethan nothing was still a really dumb thing to do. There are a couple of other problems as well. First off, having played back through Resident Evil 7 recently, they suggest Ethan died at kind of the wrong moment as far as I'm concerned. The game claims he died right at the very start when Jack Baker foot stomps you to death. Me personally, I think the logical moment for Ethan to die would be when you start playing as Mia in the boat section. It's after that Ethan starts seeing Eve and she can exert limited control over his vision and make him hallucinate, that kind of thing. That just would have made a lot more sense to me. Anyway, the other big thing with this is it raises all sorts of questions about Mia that the game just seems to have no interest whatsoever in answering. The post-game cutscene, and I absolutely love this by the way, makes it very clear that their daughter Rose is kind of like Eve from Resident Evil 7, but it never talks about what Mia's like. It's really frustrating actually. Ultimately, I think some people are absolutely going to hate the whole Ethan as mold thing, and claim it changes Resident Evil 7 considerably, as well as changing 8. When I first heard it, I genuinely wasn't sure. This kind of thing can actually often trigger my autism, surprisingly. But, no pun intended here, it's grown on me, and I really didn't see it coming, I have to say. I have one final big problem with the game's story, and I've kind of been handling this in like a loose chronological order as you probably spotted, but this one sort of harks back very much to the start of the game. Does Ethan really affect anything in this story? So late game, we get to play as Chris Redfield, in a section that's not too dissimilar from the Not a Hero DLC from Resident Evil 7, although it feels far more part of the actual story here. We see that the new Blue Umbrella Corporation he's working for are planning on taking down the village and attacking Mother Miranda's plans there. They're all set up to attack it at the start of the game, and by all accounts have a far easier time of doing that than Ethan did. Allowing for the fact, of course, that Ethan had killed her children at this stage, but he's given the tank to do one of those in by Chris Redfield. Is it not likely then that without Ethan's intervention anyway, Blue Umbrella would have had no issues dealing with this problem? Which brings us back once again to the concept that the plot pretty much revolves around Chris being as secretive as possible toward Ethan, really with no motivation. Unless I missed something really major here, it just makes it all feel a bit kind of unnecessary in terms of the story. It reminds me of Paranormal Activity 4, okay? The demon in that movie could solve everything within about the first 10 minutes, but instead, because we have to have a movie, it spends like 2 hours dicking around with everyone in the house, and then just wipes everyone out like it always could have done. It's a very similar feeling here. So I find myself asking, were my concerns about Resident Evil Village's plot valid? Well, I've been harsh in this video, okay? And you know I just compared it to Paranormal Activity 4? Here's the thing, okay? Paranormal Activity 4 has a stupid plot. But out of that stupid plot, we get a lot of good horror set pieces, and I kind of love that movie, unashamedly really. Resident Evil 8 has kind of the same thing. It's a very dumb plot, but it services the game, and go back and watch last week's review. I absolutely loved the game itself. Can I live with a dumb plot under those circumstances? I think I can, honestly. It gets a pass, but barely. So folks, that is my video for the week and the end of this kind of little Resident Evil mini-series I've had going. Next week, we will be taking a look at Mass Effect and starting a new little mini-series of its own. Again, we're not going to do reviews as such, we're just going to do some videos about aspects of game design and real-world things through a Mass Effect lens. I just knocked the mic. It's going to be a lot of fun. I will see you all then, folks. Until then, thank you for watching. I have been your Princess ChaoticAyana. You are all beautiful. Peace. I'm out.